Hey, what is good, YouTube? It's your boy Supreme Latios14, and it has been a minute since I've done one of these. But today in this video, I'm here with another edition of my Pokemon Unite Deep Dive series, where we take a look at a Pokemon, discuss it in full depth about all its moves and all that stuff, and talk about whether or not it is worth purchasing with your AOS coins. So, today's Pokemon we're going to be going over today is going to be, of course, Dragapult, because Dragapult was recently released just last week on the 29th, actually. So, Dragapult here is the newest Pokemon that has dropped into the game, and I actually started picking this Pokemon up myself. Granted, I haven't used it in a little bit, but I've been playing Dragapult a little bit here and there. I'm going to talk to you guys about its strengths, its weaknesses, and all that good stuff in this video. It's just me today, unfortunately, but it's all good. You know, gonna try to get you guys the content. And of course, if you guys do enjoy these videos, of course, don't forget to drop a like button, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell so you guys don't miss out on whenever I post these videos or whenever I stream, all that good stuff. So, is Dragapult worth purchasing with your AOS coins? So, we're going to go ahead and talk about all that right here, right now. So, Dragapult, as you see, is a ranged attacker. So, it can attack, it's pretty much kind of like a Decidueye deal where it attacks from afar rather than like being all up close. So, and Dragapult here is an attacker, as you guys can see. So, let's go ahead and pull up Dragapult symbol right here. You can see here that Dragapult has really good offensive stats as well as mobility as well. So Dragapult's really great at mobility around the field as well as having some good offensive power as well. So it is an attacker. It's a physical attacker, just so you guys are aware. It is physical, not special. It is physical. So that's something to keep note of. It is pretty squishy, so that's the only thing that you do have to keep in mind when you play Dragapult. You have to be really careful about how you use its tools, how you're able to position it, because you can't just go in on a Pokemon. You can't just go in with this Pokemon like in enemy faces and then expect to win. No, you have to really know how this Pokemon works, because this Pokemon is pretty. It's actually very, tough to learn. I'd say not really that tough. I mean, there are some things that obviously make it so like it's easy to learn, but there's a couple of things that you probably may or may not be aware about how Dragapult works, and we're gonna be going over all that in this video. I mean, well, of course, if I do end up missing anything, of course, you guys will let me know in the comments, of course. But for me personally, I do love Dragapult. Do I think it's OP? No, it's not really OP. It's good. It's balanced because it's squishy, but if you are able to master this Pokemon can be absolutely insane. It's not like super OP or anything like that, in my opinion, but I think it's a Pokemon that I think has really good potential. I think so. With that being said, let's go ahead and go over everything. So we're going to talk about his basics, and then we'll talk about his passive, and then we're going to go into his moves, and then his Unite. So let's go ahead and get into this. So first off, it's basic attacks. So basically, Dragapult's going to be a Pokemon that has an access to a basic attack gauge. You're going to see it like underneath its HP, basically. So basically, every time you use a basic attack, you're increasing your basic attack gauge, basically. So whenever you use your basic attack, you're basically increasing this gauge. The idea is you want to try to make sure you're utilizing your basic attacks to keep the gauge at full, because if you have your gauge full, your basic attacks become boosted attacks. Basically meaning that they'll be doing increased damage and have an area of effect centered on the opposing Pokemon they hit. So basically, with your basic attack, if your gauge is full, you have your boosted attacks, you're doing more damage with your basic attacks, and then being able to do more damage and have an area and effect based pretty much on the opposing Pokemon, which I think is pretty good. Now, also keep in mind, now if you don't use your basic attacks for a while, your gauge will begin decreasing. So you want to make sure if you want to keep the gauge up and going, you want to try to make sure you're having something to hit consistently, even if it's a wild Pokemon, I say. But the thing is, you want to try to keep your gauge going, your boosted basic gauge, as consistently as possible, because that's where Dragapult's damage is really going to be It's going to be coming through for the most part. So I think this is a Pokemon that really takes advantage well of basic attack damage, obviously. So basic is really good. This is also why I run Rapid Fire Scarf on this Pokemon, because Rapid Fire, as you already know, is an item that does increase basic attack speed by 30% for a short time after you use 3 basic attacks. So basically, you're getting more. You're basically getting more basics out as you're using your basics with Dragapult, which I think is really cool. And then obviously I also attack the Muscle Band. I also run Muscle Band as well because it helps with basic attack damage, basically, which is I think is really cool as well when it comes down to it. So, in case anyone was curious about why I run that particular items, of course. Now, next thing we're going to talk about is passive called Clear Body, which basically reduces the duration of debuff effects inflicted on the Pokemon. So basically it means anything that lowers it basically reduces the duration of attacks that will lower this Pokemon's attack, basically. So basically, let's say I don't really know an attack that would lower an attack on the top of my head, but basically anything that would pretty much debuff on this Pokemon, basically the duration is going to be cut. It's going to pretty much be cut short. I think it's kind of like a somewhat of a full heal, not really, but it's more of that it reduces the timer of how long the debuffs remain on this Pokemon, basically. So I think it's pretty cool. If I didn't explain that well, that passive well, I do apologize, but that's pretty much what it does. So now let's go ahead and go into progression, because this is how you're going to tell how this Pokemon is. So as you see here, as you know, it is an attacker, has low endurance, but is really good at dealing heavy ranged damage to opponents. So remember, with this Pokemon, you don't want to really be up close. You don't have to even be up close. You could just attack from afar with your basics. So that's something that's always really good to take note of. So you start out as a little Dreepy at level 1, and then you evolve into Dracalope at level 5, and then finally into Dragapult at level 9. Now, based on my experience playing this Pokemon, I think Dragapult has a really rough start in the beginning, but once you evolve into Dracalope, you actually can then put in some work. So I think this Pokemon best suits up well in the center area, because you want to try to get to level 5 as consistently as possible with this Pokemon. There are people that do well with it in lane. If you're able to do it well in lane, then kudos to you. You deserve a medal. But I think this Pokemon, in my opinion, just does much better in jungle, possibly. But that's just my opinion, of course. But those numbers. I mean, there are Pokemon that have these same levels and level requirements to evolve, obviously, that still do well in lane. Like, for example, there's Venusaur, there's Blastoise. Those two evolve at level 5 and then at level 9, but they're still able to do better on lane rather than in jungle, because Venusaur is just a Pokemon that's just really, really strong, in my opinion. And then you have Blastoise, that's a defender that you don't really have to take jungle in order for Blastoise to really be effective. And kind of another Pokemon that really has the same numbers, Mamoswine. Evolves at level 5 to Piloswine, well, from Swine to Piloswine, and then at level 9 to Mamoswine, pretty much. So that's pretty much what I think personally of this Pokemon. You may have your own preference on how you play it, but that's just what I've noticed when it comes to this Pokemon. I think it's just more effective in that area particularly. Anyways, let's go into moves here. So level 1 through 3, you get these moves to start off. So at level 1, you have a choice between Astonish and Quick Attack. So we're going to talk about Quick Attack first, because this move is pretty cool, because what this move does is it's pretty much a dash and increases your basic attack speed for a short time. So it's basically, you use this dash, and then you can basically do your basic attacks are going to come up more faster, because you can actually you actually get more of these. You get pretty much more of these. You basically I can't even talk. You're basically getting more basic attacks off after you use the Quick Attack. Now, this move doesn't do damage, but what's good about it is that it's a dash, and that it also increases the amount of your basic attack speed. So you're basically being able to get more basics out at a more faster pace thanks to Quick Attack, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And then you have Astonish, which pretty much basically lets the user fire a little blast in the forward direction, and then the shot explodes when it hits an opposing Pokemon and does damage, and then decreasing their movement speed. So this is a move that pretty much slows them down upon hitting, which I think is really good. So that's a really pretty cool starting moveset. But of course, personally for me, when I play this Pokemon, I always start with Quick Attack, because I would be able to dash through the wall and then use my basics to hit the Zatu to get things started. So that's usually the way I play it. Honestly, people may do the other. Maybe people, like, if you do it on lane, you probably go Astonish first and then Quick Attack. But for me, when I go jungle, I always go Quick Attack. I can never play this Pokemon in lane. I tried it; it just does not do well in my opinion. But I could be wrong. But anyways, Moving on to level 5, when you evolve into Dragapult, you actually get 2 moves, which we're going to talk about these, of course. We have Dragon Dance, and we have Phantom Force. So we're going to talk about Dragon Dance here. So basically, this move has the user fly in a circular pattern in the designated direction. In other words, you're basically flying in a circle. You go, wee! And then when the user's flying, it continuously deals damage to nearby opposing Pokemon with basic attacks that deal lesser damage but have increased attack speed. And then the move is used again while the user is flying. The user stops flying and moves a short distance in a designated direction. And then if the user knocks out a Pokemon on the opposing team, and this is during this move, of course, the move's cooldown is reset. And then if the user assists in knocking out a Pokemon on the opposing team, this move's cooldown is reduced. And then, obviously, when this move is used, Dragon Breath's cooldown is reset as well, so that's pretty cool. And then with the upgrade, while the user's flying, its basic attacks also restore the user HP when they hit. So basically, you're healing. So I think that's pretty cool. I think this move is pretty funny. Personally, for me, I am not a fan of Dragon Dance because you could still get stunned in the middle of the dance, which I think it's kind of bad, honestly. And this is why I prefer to play Phantom Force. Like Dragon Dance, I think still has quite a bit of decent usage. I'd say I think it's still pretty good, but I honestly feel like it's just not as great. Personally, for me, I just think, you know, if you're able to get Dragon Dance going for you, then kudos to you. But for me personally, I go Phantom Force over Dragon Dance. Now we're gonna talk about Phantom Force and talk about why I like this move first of all. So basically, when you use Phantom Force, you basically have the stealth effect like Sableye, basically. So while you're in the stealth mode, you have a movement speed increase, so you're actually able to move a little quicker while you're in the stealth mode, and then while the user's in stealth, the boosted basic attack gauges increases. So basically, the boosted basic gauge, basically, so we were talking about earlier, will increase while you're in stealth, basically, and then when your stealth ends, your basic attack speed is increased for a short time, which I think is really cool. It gives you a basic attack speed increase, which means your basics come out a lot more faster than what they would usually. So I think that's a really good effect, honestly. And the cool thing about the Phantom Force is that you can actually use this to actually, go stealth, and you can literally move in and try to catch your opponent slipping. Like I've actually had games where I will use Phantom Force to approach it to try to attack an enemy, and while they don't expect me to approach, and then I would just pretty much hit them with a Unite, and then basically I hit them with a Unite, get some good damage onto it, and then as well as then get my basic attacks damage increase as well, and the damage really comes out. It's really hilarious, honestly, especially with the team, of course. And then just like Dragon Dance, if the user knocks out a Pokemon from the opposing team, this move's cooldown is reset. But unlike Dragon Dance, this move also gives you an attack stack on this until the end of the battle. So basically meaning is that if you get a KO on the opposing Pokemon while you have Phantom Force, you get the cooldown reduction, you get the reset cooldown on this move, and you get an attack increase with every time. And you can get a maximum of up to 8 stacks upon this, which is insane. And with these stacks, meaning your damage is actually increasing the more you get KOs with Phantom Force, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. The fact that you can actually get you can get an attack step from getting KOs, I think that's honestly really ridiculous, honestly. Now, I think this Pokemon has to be the one that gets the KO, unfortunately. That's the only downside to it. But overall, I think this is really insane. And the fact that you can get multiple stacks on these, honestly, and I've seen that you can get a maximum of 8 of these stacks, which I think is really crazy. And then another cool thing is that when you get the upgrade at level 11, whenever you use your basic attacks to deal damage to opposing Pokemon, whether it's a wild Pokemon or an enemy, you're reducing the move's cooldown. Like this move takes 14 seconds in order to get to use it again. But if you get the upgrade, you're basically reducing the cooldown of this move the more basic attacks you get off. So basically, let's say, for example, okay, I use Phantom Force, I come out of Phantom Force, I'm using my basics, I have to wait 11 seconds. If I can get off at least 9 to 10 basic attacks, I'm getting really quick access to another Phantom Force right out the gate, which is really crazy. And this works against basic Pokemon and against enemy Pokemon, so that's something to take really well note of. So I think Phantom Force is great. You guys definitely should give it a shot, in my opinion. But yeah, this is why I prefer Phantom Force over Dragon Dance, because these effects that it offers, I think it's honestly pretty crazy in my opinion, obviously. So, of course, that's just my opinion. Of course, you say it as it is. Now let's go ahead and talk about the moves. You get at level 7, you have a choice between Dragon Breath and Shadow Ball. So we're gonna talk about, of course, Dragon Breath. So first off, we're gonna talk about Dragon Breath. So basically, this move is it's pretty much like Astonish, where you will hit them and then you decrease their movement speed for a short time, and then this also leaves the ground burning for a set amount of time, and opposing Pokemon in the area effect take damage over time and have their movement speed decrease for a short time. So basically, if they're in the fire, the little bit of a flame, you could they're pretty much taking damage and then they're slowed down basically. So I think it's a pretty cool move. And then if you use this move while you're flying with the Dragon Dance, so this pretty much combos well with Dragon Dance. The gust is exhaled along Dragon Dance's flight path, dealing damage to opposing Pokemon in the area effect and then decreasing the movement. So basically, you're pretty much setting the fire anywhere, pretty much. I think it's pretty cool. And then level 13, it increases the damage that it deals and then further decreases the movement speed. So, Dragon Breath is good mainly with Dragon Dance, so those two moves combo well together. And then its other move, which is Shadow Ball, which actually is pretty cool because this move actually does damage, and then basically this move hurls a Shadow Ball to the designated direction, dealing damage to opposing Pokemon it touches and applying a mark to them. And then if the user attacks marked opposing Pokemon, whether it's your basic attack or using a different move, of course, you're dealing increased damage to them. So if they have a mark after you hit them with a Shadow Ball, they're taking even more damage. So imagine with your Phantom Force stacks, and you have the Shadow Ball. If you use Shadow Ball to mark them, if you're able to mark them, of course, with the Shadow Ball, and then follow up and you came out with the Shadow Force. I said Shadow Force with Phantom Force and getting your basic attack speed increased with this. Honestly, you're doing a crazy amount of damage. It's absolutely crazy how much damage you can actually do. And then the fourth time the user attacks marked opposing Pokemon, the mark is removed. So it gets rid of the mark after the fourth hit, but the damage dealt by the attack is further increased. So you're doing even more damage, and you're getting an HP recovery off of it as well, which I think is really crazy. And then another cool thing about Shadow Ball is that after you use this move, the user can then move a short distance in a designated direction. So I actually didn't know about this when I first started playing it, which yeah, I know, I know, really, a lot of you should have known this by now. I mean, I was still experimenting this, of course, but now with Shadow Ball, you have those effects, and you can and if you're in an unfavorable situation, you can use this move to pretty much distance yourself away from the enemy if you need to. And then with the upgrade, when you get to level 13, you get to increase the amount of base damage and additional damage that's dealt as well too, which I think is really cool. So Shadow Ball combos really nicely with Phantom Force, mainly because you can use the Shadow Ball to get the marks onto them, and then you're doing a lot of damage with your basic attacks. Especially with Phantom Force, you're increasing your basic attack speed by quite a bit for a short time, and then being able to constantly stack up on the damage, and then you can get those KOs while you're using after you come out of the step with the Phantom Force. You get those attack stacks, and then you're doing even more damage. So all that stacking together, and you're having a lot of crazy damage. You can do like so much damage with this. It's ridiculous, honestly, what this Pokemon's capable of doing with that Phantom Force and Shadow Ball shenanigans. It's absolutely crazy. Now going to level 9, where you evolve into Dragapult, and then you get the Unite move, Dreep and Destroy. So let's go ahead and talk about this, because I think this is one of the craziest Unites I've ever seen. Now, let's talk about it. So basically, when you evolve, you get Dragapult, and then you get this Unite move called Dreep and Destroy. So basically, what this does, it has the user launch 2 Dreepy, and each deal damage to a different opposing Pokemon. And then the lower the opposing Pokemon remaining HP is, the more damage the Dreepy deals. So if you're able to hit this on a weakened target, they do a lot of damage. However, if there's only one target, both Dreepy will target that Pokemon and deal damage to it, of course. And the cool thing is that you get actually 2 uses of this move. This is, in my opinion, I believe this is the first Unite that actually has access to it. And I think this is the first time we actually had a Pokemon that actually had a Unite move that actually not only has 2 uses with it, but has a ridiculously fast cooldown, which I think is really ridiculous. So you're constantly using this Unite all the time. Like not all the way all the time, but like almost all the time. Like you have access to Unite. You can utilize for very quickly among other Pokemon. Where not many Pokemon have access to their Unite until after a bit of a set period of time. But Dragapult, you only have to wait like what, 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds. I think it's 5 seconds. One of the two. Basically, long story short, this is one of the fastest Unite moves that comes out really fast, and you can use them maximum 2 times. So yeah, I think this Pokemon has a lot of crazy stuff going for it. Honestly, I think Dragapult is an absolutely crazy Pokemon. Um, so do you guys is this Pokemon worth purchasing with your AOS coins? I have to say yeah, because you know what? Considering what it has to offer, now granted, this Pokemon will be a bit tricky to learn at first, but once you get the hang of this Pokemon, I think this Pokemon can actually really do some work. Honestly, I think this Pokemon is really, really good in my opinion. Really, really good. So, for items, this is my personal build. For course, if you guys want to try it for yourself, I run Rapid Fire Scarf. Obviously because this is a Pokemon that takes advantage of basic attacks quite a bit. So you want to probably run that Rapid Fire to be pretty much increase your basic attack speed even more. And the reason why I run this is because I also run Phantom Force over Dragon Dance for that increased basic attack speed. So imagine how fast your basic attacks are going to be coming out. And then on top of that, being able to dish out more damage, especially when you get the Shadow Ball, I think it's ridiculous. And then the Unite, and then I also run Energy Amplifier because with the Unite move, you're able to get your Unite move consistently. With the Energy Amp, I like Energy Amp because after you use your Unite, the damage this Pokemon does is increased by 21% for a short time, basically. So, this is a Pokemon. This is an item. An item that I think works really nicely with Dragapult because you're constantly uniting quite a bit, so you can increase the damage you do with this Pokemon's basic attack. Not just basic attacks, but with any move you use from this, like Shadow Ball. You know, with this Unite move, you're doing a lot of crazy damage with this honestly, and I think it's really crazy. Now, Must Have Been is an item I just recently put on this because I needed something to help with the basic attack. Because I felt like one thing I kind of didn't like about this Pokemon was that its basic attacks damage alone without these is just so abysmal. Like it's so very little that's just something that you have to definitely take note of when you do play this. Um, so I think this Pokemon is just pretty crazy. Now, people probably sit there and say maybe you probably run something like a Buddy Berry, which I also agree. Buddy Berry is not bad because Buddy Berry will give your team a shield, of course, and being able to unite consistently. You'll be able to take a good advantage of Buddy Berry and keep giving your team shields in team fights. Honestly, I feel like with Dragapult, you kind of want to focus a bit more on the damage overall, I think. So this is why I go with this particular build. But these are just some items that I think that you could also give it a try as well. Maybe you may have there may be some other items that may make this Pokemon better. Obviously, maybe I'm not sure. But this is the build that I felt most comfortable with when it comes to Dragapult. And I think I'm personally am a fan of it. Um, and then for albums, I do pretty much run a red album build. In fact, let me see if I can show you guys here. Assuming it didn't mess up here. Actually, I think I might have, but this is not the build. I think it's right here. Nope. Yeah, they messed it up, unfortunately. But basically, what I would do is I would run something like a Yeah, I'm gonna have to fix this later because it always keeps resetting for whatever reason. But basically, what I would do is I run 7 reds and 4 whites. The red is obviously for your basic attack speeds to go up, and then you also have the I also have the white emblems. I basically use it for crits to increasing the amount of critical hits that I can get off with it, and then that further increases the damage, of course, and then the white emblems as well will also help with some HP, so Dragon Ball can survive a bit longer. Like I try to aim to make this Pokemon do as much damage as possible because its role is pretty much an attacker. Um, so I wanted to try to get as much damage as possible with this Pokemon, but obviously you might have a better idea about how to utilize this Pokemon, but that's just something that I found more comfortable with using when it comes to this Pokemon. But yeah, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. I apologize for this video being quite long, but I kind of wanted to make a deep dive on this Pokemon and talk about it in full depth about why I like it and such. So, I think this is a Pokemon that you should definitely get with your AOS coins once it becomes available. I believe if I'm not mistaken, but by the time you're watching this video, Dragapult should be available with the Aeos coins in just a couple of days, I believe. So, in fact, let me double check. Let's go to the shop, and then we can go to the Pokemon shop here, and then we can see. Yeah. So basically, by the time you're watching this video, Dragapult will be available with coins at this time. So I think this Pokemon is worth your Aeos coins, guys. I think this is a Pokemon that I think you should definitely practice. Like, I'll say get it, but I'd say practice with it in practice areas first before you decide to pick it up. But I think this Pokemon is really worth it personally. That's just me. Obviously, I could, maybe I'm just overhyping it, of course. But it says here that it's available in 1 more hour. But by the time you're watching this video, this Pokemon should now be available with your AL's coins now as we speak. So, I think it's worth it, guys. I think it's worth it. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you guys think of Dragapult. Do you guys think I did a good job explaining it? Is there anything I forgot to mention when it comes to explaining this Pokemon? But, yeah, I like Dragapult, guys. I really do. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you guys next time. Take care.